Ask an Expert time. And we have the wonderful and amazing and always entertaining Lauren Sprieser with us. You know her, but like I said, and if you're in the Facebook group, like I said in my Facebook post, she still deserves an introduction. So she's, of course, a Ride IQ coach. She's a Grand Prix dressage rider and trainer with distinction, I think is how you say it. And she is a bronze, silver, and gold medalist with USDF. And she's produced a lot of horses to the Grand Prix level, and she's helped her students do that too, which is, of course, just an incredible feat. And she's an incredible person and has so much to teach us. And today we get to talk about a very, I think it'll be an entertaining and educational topic. Lauren sent us a note after coaching at the Tryon 3-day event and was like, if you guys want to chat about this, I have lots of observations and plenty to say. I was like, we're taking you up on that. So we're talking about a dressage coach's perspective of 3-day events, basically, and wherever that conversation takes us. And we got tons of great questions ahead of time. If you're watching live on YouTube, as always, please ask questions as we go. Lauren, I know yesterday I saw an Instagram story from you at 4:30 in the morning, I think heading to the airport. And so I have to, as always, just thank you for making time for us, despite the fact that you are, I think, kind of getting as much as you can out of the 24 hours every day of the week. So thank you for giving us an hour.
I got out of the shower. I think we concluded I got out of the shower about like 14 minutes ago. So like,
and
I smell divine.
She smells good. She looks good. And when I hopped on here, she somehow, in a matter of seconds, put up like blackout curtains so that she's
creating
a proper studio. It would have probably taken me like an hour to figure that out. But Lauren, let's start with, you are now, I mean, let's just kind of set the table. I'll take a deep breath. You're in Virginia now. You spend half of your year in Virginia, half of your year in Florida. And last time we talked to you, I think that you were in Florida. So tell us about when you got settled in Virginia, what you're up to, what your life is like right now. Are you training and showing? Just kind of give us
what is my life like right now. Hello. So we do 4 months in Wellington, 8 months in Virginia. So I got that. What month is it? It's May. It's the end of May. We've been back for about 6 weeks. Great. Clearly it's a very relaxed and calm, quiet time, as you can tell from my generally wide-eyed look. We hit the ground running because we're insane. And also not for nothing, because I come home from Wellington very poor. And so like, hustlers gotta hustle. So I've been out hustling. Yes, one of the reason that I got out of the shower 13 minutes ago is because I finished my last lesson at 6:45. Because that's the job and I love the job. But certainly, yes, I'm doing a lot of riding and I'm doing a little competing. Mostly I'm teaching a lot. We have nice weather in Virginia for another like 6 weeks, and then it becomes Satan's armpit, and then I will get to take like a very, very small breath, which is kind of nice.
Good.
But until then, it is full speed ahead. I'm coaching, I'm clinicking, horses are good. And what was fun about when I got asked to come to Tryon is that because the dressage is like Wednesday, Thursday, or I guess it would have been Thursday, Friday. No, it would have been Wednesday, Thursday. I had time. I made time to go. I worked a couple of horses. Actually, no, I worked a couple of horses. I drove to Charlottesville, Virginia, where I had a back procedure done and then finished driving the rest of the way, which is kind of great because I was very comfortable on my drive. But yeah, I got there in time to help my student, Tim Burke, who, for any who don't know, is a very accomplished Irish event rider, is a 5-star rider. He was longlisted for the Irish World Games team. And then a couple of years ago, he broke his leg. A little more than a year ago, he broke his leg. And things that this little dressage country mouse has gotten to learn, you have to qualify your way back up to the 4- and 5-star level when you've had a break of a certain amount of time. So Tim went from being the category of rider that can basically enter any horse at anything he wants to having to completely start over. Ugh. And I get that. I get why. Like, I understand that if, you know, my next door neighbor who's never been on a horse before wants to enter the Grand Prix tomorrow, it's unlikely to cause his death. Whereas entering, you know, a level that is beyond what you can enter in eventing could cause your death. Like, I totally get it. But it's been sort of an interesting journey with him on like, oh my God, we have to really compete a lot on his one particular horse that is now doing the 4-star, trying to qualify to move up to the 5-star. And there are just so many more factors that y'all have to think about in eventing than we have to think about in dressage. And I knew that, but getting to watch it happen in real time was really fascinating. And so, yes, I busted the event writer's chops when I texted Jess and Kinsey and was like, we need to talk about eventing. But I wasn't actually as horrified as the promos for this evening would suggest. That was marketing.
Yeah, we got to get people to show up somehow. I think it's a fun conversation because we all live, for the most part, in our own world of whatever discipline we're doing. There are people, of course, who cross over and like really get exposed to both, but the majority of people are kind of living within their own bubble of their own discipline. So if you're listening right now and you're an event rider, you're about to get the perspective of someone who's coming in and seeing event riders' norms and being like, this was surprising. Or maybe you're listening and you're a dressage rider and Lauren can be like, this is the craziness that's going on across the street. So I think whatever perspective you're bringing, it's just kind of fun to check ourselves, and what we consider normal is just normal, you know, because that's what we're used to. So Lauren, I didn't realize that Tim Burke had gotten hurt and needed to kind of crawl his way back up the ladder. But tell me, how long have you been working with Tim? Do you have other event riders that you're working with? Just tell us a little bit more background about that relationship.
Sure. So in general, I live outside of Middleburg, Virginia. So I've been here for 17 years and I have helped, certainly not all of Northern Virginia's professional event riders, but like a lot of them have shown up at least once or twice, which is fun and also interesting. And I have thoughts on this. But Tim, who, if you've never met him, is an absolutely darling, kind, wonderful human being. He and his wife, Marley, are both wonderful, and I've known them socially for several years, and I'd helped Marley a bit. But Tim called me, I guess, two or 3 years ago, and my phone rings, and I'm not going to try and do my Irish impersonation because it's not going to happen. But he said, Lauren, everyone says that you can make dressage less awful, and I have a horse who finishes on his dressage score every time, except that his dressage score is really bad, and we both hate dressage, and I don't know what to do. And can I send you the horse for a month? So yes, I rode the horse for a month. The horse's name is Monbeg Libertine. He is known as Fish in the Barn, and I have helped many upper level event horses before. I understand that they have to be crazy fitter than anything that I have ever ridden around at the International Grand Prix level. I understand this. My brain knows this. And that the, third level dressage, third, fourth level dressage, which is the 4 and 5-star levels requirements, does not require the top line, the carrying power, the honesty to the aids that a Grand Prix dressage horse does. I get that too. But I have had in my barn over the years a couple of 5-star horses, and I am reliably blown away by how not trained they feel. And certainly being an observer of sport, I don't have an opinion. I don't about whether the sport is going in the right or wrong direction with choosing warm blood horses more and the influx of more warm blood over thoroughbred blood. But I know a hell of a lot about riding warm bloods because that's basically all we do. And my biggest, like, I am the missionary in the country that doesn't want to be converted, screaming from the rooftops thing is that I see so many riders when they've already started to have problems instead of at the beginning. And there is nothing angrier on the planet than a young warm blood horse. Like, there's nothing more hostile and irrationally hostile than a young warm blood horse. And it's very easy to get talked into like mitigating it instead of taking it on. And for sure, this fish horse, who Tim did not develop himself, was a horse that, like, easy for me to say knowing him as an adult and not as a kid, but I can see how that would have been a very cheeky child. And it would have been easy for a horse like this one to like talk you into mitigating instead of taking it on. And so I am helping Tim take it on as an aftermarket install, which is much harder than installing it right the first time. But we are getting somewhere, and I'm super, super proud, not only of the horse for getting better. We are not done on this journey, but also for Tim, who approaches dressage with Irish disdain. I have gotten the man to say, this is kind of fun.
That's
I really
cool.
I feel like I deserve a prize.
So I'm interested to hear about the mitigating versus taking it on. Is that more of a concept for green horses, or is that kind of any horse? And just describe like what those two different approaches look like, because I imagine when you talk about event horses being a bit like untrained, it's because of the mitigating and just trying to get through the dressage. Is that right?
For sure. And I think we come down to, you know, I'm not a horse racist. I love all breeds and all types, but things look like their parents. Things go a lot like their parents. Humans, dogs, horses, snails, like, we look like our genetics. And when we talk about the thoroughbred horse, which has been, you know, the mount of choice in eventing since eventing wore short pants, we talk about a horse that was bred for tremendous energy efficiency. So they turn oats into miles. They put as little effort as possible into going as fast as possible. The warm blood horse was bred for energy inefficiency. Dressage is all about energy inefficiency. It is about using as much energy as possible to not go anywhere. Think about what Piaffe is. Crazy energy, literally going nowhere. And I have been a student of eventing on the periphery long enough to appreciate, my God, the athlete, the mind and the athlete required to be good at dressage, energy inefficiency, cross country, extraordinary energy efficiency, and then show jumping, which is this weird hybrid of the two. Like, how is any horse able to do this? And again, if you're going to die cross country, you're going to die in show jumping. No one dies from seeing a bad distance to a half pass. So of course, more time and energy is spent cultivating talent and tapping into talent in any, you know, event horse's development. The problem is that talent only goes so far. And I'm sure this is me talking out of my ass about a sport that I've never done. So
I'm
yes.
loving, I haven't heard of it, like the efficiency part of it. I just haven't heard of it described that way, but it's so true.
So I don't know how to train a cross country horse. I wouldn't even know where to begin, but certainly having a horse that's talented for it would probably be a good place to start. But I think you can go a long way on talent over jumps. And you can also go a fairly long way when it comes to eventing dressage on a horse that comes out of the womb and flicks its toes like a warm blood horse. And where I see the difference in the development of the young warm blood horses, you know, second level is where the wheels fall off the wagon. That's intermediate, which means that for an event rider on a warm blood horse that hasn't really been made to be totally honest to the aids through and use his whole body except the leg, you know, be able to accept the rider's energy instead of the rider just like harnessing whatever energy the horse brings to the table, they can go almost all the way to the end of the levels before hitting that wall. Whereas we can't go anywhere. We can
Yeah.
barely begin. And so there is a hugely different motivation to take it on. Also, not for nothing, but every event rider I've ever spoken to says that you cannot train a 5-star horse at home. They have to go out and compete in novice. They have to go out and compete training. They have to go out and learn that sometimes they're going to jump in the rain and sometimes they're going to jump in the mud and they're going to jump weird shit and shadows and boxes and people over there, things that you cannot create at home. Can't do it, even if you have the most incredible facility on the planet. Whereas I could train a horse to go to the Olympic Games from home and not go anywhere.
And is that just because of the variability that you would introduce at an event versus at a dressage show?
Every white rectangle is kind of like every other white rectangle. And for sure, horses need to learn how to go away from home and behave. But even the scariest dressage show, sort of getting back to like what little country mouse Lauren learned at the big city event, like the most chaotic dressage show I've ever been to was like nowhere near the level of insanity going on in the periphery at this particular event. And I'm guessing that Tryon is not unusual in this.
Right. So I haven't been to Tryon myself, but I've heard it's incredibly beautiful, incredibly well run. So for other people who haven't been there, I mean, you've probably, like me, heard about it. It has a reputation for being a very respectable event. So this isn't out of the ordinary. Let's talk about Tryon, and maybe we start at the warm-up, since you were just kind of alluding to how different that is from what you're used to at dressage shows. And I have no idea what a normal dressage show warm-up would be like.
So let us set the stage. This is not a national show. This is an international event. International events have rules on stabling. The stabling is sort of quarantined off. You have to have a wristband for access. That's true for CDI's international level dressage competitions as well. So that's not like your local horse show, Summer Series 4. That's the CDI in Wellington, dressage at Devon. There are CDIs held at Tryon. So I'm comparing that, the CDIs to the CCIs and CICs of the world. So I pull onto the property. Let's before we even get to the warm-up, I got to pull onto the property. There's a big jumper show, 100 jumper show going on at the same time. That's not totally unusual for us in dressage land too. I actually just came back from a CDI and a national dressage show held at the same time alongside a 100 jumper show, which was very fun. But you drive past all the jumper stuff and then you pull up to the barn and they're putting up the gates because they've done the jog, and they're putting up the gates to like block the stabling off. I am immediately blown away by how much gear there is. And this is one of those like, hey, you dumbass, they've got 3 different sports to do in 3 days. Of course, they have a lot of stuff, but it's not just the tech. It's the muck tubs for icing. It's the hay gain steamers, because you really have to think about respiratory stuff with endurance competition horses like event horses in a way that we don't necessarily have to think about in dressage. It's all of the humans, because you need a lot of people. You need a lot of grooms to attend to each horse as it comes off cross country. So there's chairs everywhere. There's e-bikes everywhere. There's just so much stuff. I walk into the barn. Tryon is beautiful. Tryon is owned by the same guys that built Global Dressage Festival and the Winter Equestrian Festival. So it's like beautiful permanent barns and beautiful permanent stalls. And the aisle is a shit show the aisle is a mess because everybody's horses are sticking their heads out. And that, like, I stopped in my tracks and was like, but what if they touch each other? And what if Dobbin looks at Secretariat the wrong way and he gets feelings? Because it's sort of just not done at dressage shows. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying we are doing it right. Like, dressage is weird. We do plenty wrong. but I was like, they're letting their horses be like friendly with each other. Whoa. And also just so many more people mulling around, tons and tons of humans. We finally get the horse ready. Off we go to the warm up. Now, of course, it's also pouring rain. And I mean, it's funny. It just started raining here. Like, if you've never lived in the southeastern United States, there is nothing like a summer storm in the South. It'll knock you out. Yeah, if I disappear, it's because the power's gone out. So they'd had to hold the jog for an hour or two. Like, it was a mess, and the place is underwater. And there is one covered arena. So that is where everybody is. And by everybody, I mean everybody. Like everybody. There was a 1-star division, a 2 short, a 2 long, a 3 short, a 3 long, a 4 long. I think there was a 4 short, plus like some intercollegiate eventing things. So there were national events too. And everybody's trying to ride in a space that is bigger than a standard dressage arena for sure, but like not a whole lot bigger. And here we run into thing number 2 that is different from any dressage show of any level that I've ever been to. In addition to the riding going on in the warm-up arena, there are human beings walking through the warm-up arena. You'd get your ass kicked. Some technical delegate would beat you mercilessly with a buggy whip if you tried to walk on your own 2 feet through the warm-up. Not going to happen. Lunging. There was lunging going on in the warm-up arena. No. Verboten. And like not on the edge of the warm-up arena, like kind of in the middle, in a way that was, for me, a little rule-abiding. I like order and structure in the rule DQ. I was losing it. I was like, this is so unsafe. The one person lunging was lunging in a Pessoa system. Nope, not at a dressage show. You get side reins. I think maybe you can use like Vienna reins, like triangle reins, but that's it. That's all she wrote. And I actually don't even know what the rules are for lunging at an international dressage show because I've never seen anyone do it ever. Like, it is not done. So, interesting.
I'm already feeling shocked because
just a lot.
It really is a lawless place. I'm sure that we have TDs who are listening who could enlighten us really about how lawless it is. But I think it's, I mean, all of these things you're mentioning are allowed. It's pretty lawless.
Certainly nobody stopped them. And
yeah,
now
right.
maybe this was an unusual circumstance because it had rained so hard and everything was underwater. Like maybe that was what was going on. And I didn't ask, and I've never read the the FEI eventing rule book because sorry, no. So maybe this was a weird moment, or maybe the TDs didn't see it. Although, like, how did you not? Certainly, there were plenty of officials around, and like there was nothing actually unsafe. Like nobody got bucked off, although it was close there for a minute anyway. No horses were harmed in the preparation of this thing. But yeah, I just like my blood pressure went way up because I was like, holy shit. This would not happen at any dressage show that I've ever been to.
I was typing. I was asking ChatGPT. It's allowed.
What the eventing rules are?
ChatGPT says yes, lunging a horse in the warm-up at an international 3-day event is allowed under FEI rules, but there are specific guidelines. So I think this seemed, crazy and is also allowed. And also, I'm happy to know like walking through the arena is totally taboo at a dressage show because that's something as an event rider, somebody would show up and, walk through like it's nothing and be not right.
At the average local, yokel, national dressage show, a level 2 recognized dressage show, there's probably going to be someone who's going to scream at you if you walk across the warm-up arena on foot. Most of the time, that is not a thing that is done, and you'll probably get yelled at. So just interesting.
Yeah. So to contrast, it at a dressage show, what other rules are there that happen at a dressage show that are not happening at an event in the warm-up? Like, do they cap number of horses in there? Or are you only allowed to ride a certain amount of time before your test? Or is anything else happening to make that a more I guess I should say a less chaotic place?
A more tranquil experience. I think it varies on the show, and on actual competition day, where the weather mercifully let up, they had like that covered warm-up space where everybody was allowed. I believe everybody was allowed, and then there was sort of like a 10-minute arena that was a separate arena where you were allowed. I believe the rules at that day were that you could go around the 20 by 60 perimeter fence that was in this separate area if you were 2 away, and then if you were on deck you could actually go into that space. I have experienced things like that before in CDI competition, but it depends on the venue. It depends on what sort of warm-up space is available. And also taking advantage of things like that either is or is not good for your horse. Like, you get to know, you don't have to go to the 10-minute box. You can stay in the bigger warm-up. Like, there's different approaches. And certainly at a CPEDI, that is an international para dressage show, there's even a whole nother level of who can be where, in that you can bring a companion horse actually into the show stadium while your show horse goes, at the lower levels, to try and do everything possible to make sure that the horse competing is as comfortable and relaxed as possible. Because if you're taking care of someone with limited use of their body, they can't, they're allowed to have a friend. They should be allowed to have a friend.
Totally.
And that is not a thing that is done, certainly in CDI dressage competition. I would assume also not in eventing competition.
Well, that actually might be something we have to fact check as well, because I saw one of the upper level riders has a mini that he ponies along with his horse in warm up. I saw it last year happening. So I don't know where that falls, but that could have added an element to your experience too.
This was a miniless experience, but
pretty darn cute.
know about this.
Yeah, I'll fact check that. And if anyone in the Facebook group, if anyone listening now or later wants to follow up in the Facebook group on that, I would be interested. So something that comes to mind as you're describing this is when I listen to Ride IQ lessons with you and other dressage coaches compared to event coaches, there's a different approach to the ride. And I think maybe I'm generalizing too much, but what I've kind of gathered is you and other dressage coaches kind of have a goal at the outset. You get to work on the exercise that serves that goal, and you do it a few times, you accomplish it, and it's done. It's like very straightforward. Whereas event riders, there's less of a clear path through what's happening. Is anything like that apparent as you're watching people warm up at an event? Like, they're warming up quite differently than you would see people warming up at a dressage event?
Absolutely. And what I noted was how much riding there was. Like, these guys were on their horses, and they were on their horses quite a lot. And I remember, I forget what Olympic Games it was, but there was an Olympic Games where the show jumping team didn't do very well. And the chef de keep gave a talk somewhere that I listened to, and he said the reason that we didn't medal at that Olympic Games was because I couldn't keep the riders off their horses. And for sure, as a dressage person, being on too long can be problematic. My warm blood horses, even the fittest horses I've had, my either most lunatic or like most I have thought and devoted time and energy to their fitness horses, Grand Prix horses, had a clock, and I needed to think about energy management from a making sure they had enough standpoint. I felt like for many of the riders at this event, there was an energy management strategy about making sure they didn't have too much. And certainly, when we're talking about young horses doing their first, local yokel competitions, like, yeah, sometimes I'm lunging things down to like, nobody die today. But by the time you get to the international level, you've really got a plan that is around like, okay, I'm going to get on, I'm going to make sure this 8 is sharp, I'm going to touch this button, and then I'm going to go. And there was the warm up. There was the ride before the jog, then there was the ride after the jog, then in the morning there was the pre-ride before the warm-up for the test. In 2 days, I helped some of the horses in the group that I helped 5 times in 2 days.
Yep.
And really, it was about 30 hours that I was there, and none of them were tired on day 3. So it was just, and this comes down to like, yeah, hey, Sprieser, dumbass, you got to be pretty fit to run a 4-star. I know. But it was interesting to see how much that fitness had to be managed in order to produce, theoretically, 5 to 6 minutes of tranquility in a wide arena.
So that's interesting because I see that same approach carry over to kind of all the levels. Like, I think that event riders tend to warm up a long time. I mean, not only for the dressage phase, for the jumping phases too. And not all of the horses are, that fit and potentially going to have an explosion in the dressage ring. So I think that it makes sense at the level that you were coaching at and probably seeing the most of. But it's also something to think about just in terms of like, if you are an event rider and Lauren was your dressage coach coming to help you with your novice test, would you really be on for 45 minutes, before you have to go into that test? Or has that just become kind of what you do and what your barn mates are doing? There's kind of a consideration to be happening there, I think.
Yeah, and every athlete is different, and of course, every level is different, and you have to know your horse. But yes, if someone has told you that all horses require 45 minutes to warm up, just know that reserve national champion Guernsey Elvis had a 15-minute warm-up strategy to compete at the International Grand Prix level, and it served him very well.
Sweet Elvis.
Elvis.
Okay, so is there anything else we should cover about warm-up before we move on to our next
other things? The last piece of the warm-up puzzle that I found interesting was how much equipment was in the warm-up. And again, this is not said with judgment because I don't expect something that is fit enough to run a 5-star to be light and fluffy in the bridle. But in dressage, you are allowed a pretty narrow range of bits. Snaffle, double bridles, nothing is all that sharp. There are no auxiliary reins, no side reins, no draw reins, no gag type situations. And I saw a whole lot of interesting bit setups with a dressage saddle on, but in dressage warm-up because these were the bits that they were jumping in. I don't know what the actual rule is on that, but it was certainly very interesting that you can't warm up the day before at a dressage show. You can't warm up before. It's not just that this bit, this is the book of bits that you're allowed to use in the ring. This is the book of bits you're allowed to use, period. Hard stop. And so clearly, since there were folks warming up in their jumping bits, even like on dressage competition day, bits that would not pass muster with the FEI going into a dressage test, that was something I'd never seen before.
Wow, that's really interesting. As a dressage coach, I guess I don't know at that level, but you were probably one of the very few dressage coaches there helping.
I saw 1 or 2 other people coaching, and I didn't know any of them, which doesn't mean anything. It just means that I didn't know any of them. There were also 1 or 2 who had somebody holding up a phone, like they maybe had somebody warming them up on FaceTime. But yeah, I ran into No one that I knew from straight up dressage land.
Wow.
Everyone that I ran into, I knew from either they play in both worlds or I've met them along the way as event riders, or I'm geeky and I follow them. Like Tammy Smith, I think is beautiful. And I was too
Um,
to introduce myself to you.
it is really interesting that that is not that it's outside of the norm to have. I mean, honestly, I think it's outside of the norm to have a consistent dressage coach in general as an event rider. And that I'm wondering if that, when you mentioned that you've had a lot of the upper level event riders come in for a lesson, here and there, and you said something like that's a whole nother thing. Is that what you were getting at? The fact that there's not a consistent dressage program?
I don't know what coaching culture is like in eventing, in show jumping and cross country coaching. I don't know if people have 5, 10, 15, 20-year relationships with their coaches. That's not remotely unusual in dressage, that somebody is with the same coach for a really long time. But I also think that, and I understand the financial element of this. Like, it's really hard to pay one coach. It's 3 times as hard to pay 3 coaches. Like, I get it. But I am, if I could wave my magic wand over eventing's approach to dressage, people like me would see people like them on those horses when they were 4 and 5 and 6 for the first time, instead of seeing them for the first time when they are 10, 11, 12, when they're already running into problems. I remember Middleburg experiences, sitting in my dentist's office reading the Chronicle of the Horse, because my dentist's office had a Chronicle. And I remember reading an article, this was many, many years ago, Woodge Fulton would have been just like an old young rider, or just freshly out of young riders. And she was a working student for Dirk Schroeder in Germany. And she said in this article in the Chronicle, Dirk's 5-year-olds are more on the bit than anything I've ever competed advanced in my life. And I remember this because I was like, yes, my darling, please, like, spread the word of the Lord about on the bit, and really on the bit as young horses. Because I feel like the time to take on throughness and inner tranquility under pressure is not when they're already fit. It's when you can wear them out.
I like that a lot. And that's, I mean, you're right. There's all sorts of considerations about coaching and who you're going to work with. But there's also, a lot of people who get themselves to the 11, 12-year-old age, whatever level they're at. And it's just hardship and frustration that maybe could have been helped with this sort of approach ahead of time. So I think that that's really good to mention. When you were warming up with Tim, do you feel like yours and Tim's warm up was significantly different than a lot of the warm ups that were happening, or not so much because it was similar enough horses that needed similar enough things and people were doing that?
In fairness, I didn't spend a lot of time and energy watching other people warm up. I certainly could tell you, I could pick out who was working, like who really took their dressage seriously. From not just how well it was going, but also, were they riding like a dressage rider in their bodies, or were they riding like an event rider with a cross country rider with long stirrups? Because that's a different leg position. And when I look at Tammy Smith, and when I look at Philip Dutton, and when I look at oh my God, anyway, any of the big guys, Will Coleman, there we go. Like, they look like us. They look like the dressage riders. Lainey Echter, who actually does Grand Prix dressage as well, like, she looks like a dressage rider. And there were a whole lot of other people who, balanced, organized, like good riders. I saw no crappy riding, none. But certainly, like, ear, shoulder, hip, heel, open chest, lifted chin, instead of like, we might be going cross country, I've just lengthened my stirrups.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me, because that's something that's so incredibly easy to pick out of a crowd. And regardless of the horse someone's sitting on, how they sit in dressage makes it so clear if they've had that training or not. And it reminds me, actually, I saw, this is a shout out to your, I don't know if her title is barn manager or what her title is, but Skylar, who also helps us with things. We love her. There was a picture of her. I think she had won at a show, or she did really well at a show, and you gave her a shout out post. And I did a double take because I was like, was that Lauren? And it was a picture of Skylar. And you guys both just have, like, obviously Skylar is young and up and coming, but her position is so, clearly correct. And that really is a differentiator between, like you're saying, event riders and dressage riders. All right. I know you have a list, I believe, of some other things that were surprising to you. We can get into the list, or we can jump to the tests next and how people ride tests.
I can bang out my list really quick. Time out of the stall. Like, yeah, we at a CDI, like, yes, we take our horses for hand walks. If we're really lucky, there might be a place where we can take our horses to go graze, but it is observed. Like, there is a person standing there. I have been to CDIs where you are only allowed out of the stall for a certain period of time. And so the technical delegate stands there and watches everybody graze their horses. At the event, no one was in their stall ever. Like, everybody was out. Everybody was moving around. I didn't see any kind of obvious perimeter. Like, there were people everywhere. There were people up on the hill. There were people over by the construction site where they're going to, like, eventually never build this hotel. Maybe they were over by the jumper side. Like, there were people everywhere. And then, of course, this jumper show is also going on. It was very hard to tell from a distance who was who. At a CDI with a jumping show going on at the same time, some technical delegate somewhere would have been screeching at any wayward jumping show rider to get out so that they knew what they were looking at. As I mentioned, the riding was lovely. I saw no crappy riding. I didn't see anybody get rough on their horse. I didn't see anybody who, was really like, oh boy, it's going to be bad. Like, certainly there were some horses where I was like, wow, you're being obnoxious, but handled beautifully. There was no crappy riding, and that surprised me.
That's cool.
Sorry, eventing. I was expecting to be horrified, and I wasn't. So sorry.
I'm surprised to hear it too.
And thank you, eventing, for not wearing crazy outfits. Dressage, you wear what you want. It's fine. I don't care. But, like, it maybe doesn't need to be pink. Like, maybe it doesn't need to be pink.
Okay, not to play the devil's advocate, but in dressage people's defense, event riders the next day get to go out and be nuts with the pink boots and the pink helmet cover and the pink everything, glitter. So they can have different ways to get that out of their system.
Fair enough. But I will just tell you all what my coach tells me, which is don't bedazzle anything you don't want the judge looking at. So there you go. One fashion adjacent thing that is actually kind of real, and I have known this for a long time, is that I saw almost no one in real stiff dress boots. And the ones that I did see in real stiff dress boots were in the top group of horses and riders.
Wow.
Now, maybe that is because boots are expensive. Not everybody has the funds to buy the soft boot that you need to go show jumping cross country in, and also the really expensive stovepipe stiff boot that you do dressage in. Like, that's hard. People that are really good riders get good sponsors. Like, maybe that was that. But if you are thinking about adding a dressage boot into your life, I can tell you that they are stiff functionally, because you look more still in a stiff boot than you do in a soft bedroom slipper boot. So, fashion tip from me. Take that for what it's worth.
I never knew that. I have noticed that dressage riders' boots look different. But yeah, that's good to know kind of why people do that.
There is a reason why we wear those stiff boots.
And they probably, I mean, it's easy to keep them looking a bit nicer if you're not wearing the same boots for your schooling and your dressage test and you're walking your cross country course Again, not always practical, but a lot of I know that that's the way it goes for a lot of people, and definitely looks different. Okay, I could dive into some member questions. What do you think about that?
Let's do it.
Okay, Pam has a wonderful question. She said, "Do you feel straight dressage and eventing dressage movements that are the same are judged differently at their respective shows?"
The bar on quality of movement in eventing dressage is lower, and that's not said as a dig. The kind of mover that scores well in my orbit is big moving and lots of legs everywhere, and that I can't even imagine trying to keep any of my lovely moving horses sound doing what an event horse has to do. So for sure that's part of it. Yeah, I, mm, mm, I at the big levels, I watched like 2 seconds of Kentucky dressage and have watched over the years about 20 seconds in totality of Kentucky dressage. And I think that the horses that are winning the dressage would get the same kinds of marks, similar kinds of marks, doing third and fourth level at the average national third and fourth level horse show. Yeah, certainly there's a lot that I don't understand about low-level eventing judging, low-level eventing dressage judging, where sometimes people bring me their tests and I'm like, what? And I don't know why that is, but certainly I think that there is more room to get good marks in eventing dressage for doing something technically well on a boring mover than in dressage at the international levels of eventing and in third, fourth level dressage, trying to make apples to apples.
Yep.
It's a little easier to get away with being less correct on a bigger moving horse to get points in dressage.
So the lower level comment, do you think that's because lower level judges might just have there is more variability on how they're scoring and what they're looking for, or like what's odd about what you're seeing in lower level tests?
It is very consistently inconsistent. Whereas for sure at the, I go show first level at one horse show and a judge will say something wacky every now and then. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Because humans are humans. But I feel like in my, my limited window of the people that I help, but I help a lot of them. It is very consistently inconsistent, the judging
Yeah.
at the lower levels.
Less predictable.
Yeah. And I don't know why. I have no idea why.
Yeah. Okay. On a similar topic, and I'm not sure if you have an answer to this, but Simone said, from an eventer who turned her thoroughbred into a dressage horse, I want to know why most everybody at a horse trials scores in the 20s and low 30s, and everybody at similar levels at dressage shows score in the 60s and low 70s, and up is seen much less commonly.
I read that comment, and I think that I would say that maybe you're going to the wrong dressage shows, because I just showed my very nice horse at first level, and I got a 75 and a 77, so that would be a 25 and a 23. Go me. And certainly, yeah, you don't see that many 80s at national dressage shows, whereas you will occasionally see a score in the teens. But again, I think that there's a lot more tolerance for normal moving in an eventing dressage competition, because that is more the norm. I went through one session of the dressage judges education program, the L program, which is like the very, very, very bottom. So yeah, I'm really an expert. But my understanding is that certainly in dressage, the way that they approach the judging is that, yes, you are being judged against like 0 to 10, but you are also being judged against what is the average at that level, what is better than the average at that level, and what is below the average at that level. So, the average novice horse, God love them, is not going to burn the barn down when it comes to elasticity of movement. Whereas the average first level dressage horse, like, yeah, some of them are very normal moving, but some of them are my banging good 6-year-old that is going to go on to big hairy things that have to have really big elastic movement. So I think average in eventing dressage and average in dressage are just different types of athlete. Just different
Yes.
types.
Okay, that makes sense. We have a question that is off topic, but I thought it was really interesting and I welcomed off topic. So that's okay with you too. Grace said, I'd love for her to discuss why the market is so different for dressage versus event horses. I was listening to the first Equestrian Mastermind episode, and they were throwing out figures that I've never seen for an event horse.
I did some research. I did some homework.
Oh my gosh.
Because I enjoyed this question. So first of all, I think that the prices of international event horses are getting to be a lot more like the prices of our horses. So brace yourself for that. The other bit of research that I did has to do with breeding. And again, I don't know if this is good, bad, or otherwise, but certainly the trend in eventing sport has been putting more emphasis on dressage, which means that better moving horses are going to score better than the average, thoroughbred who is bred to be efficient. And for whatever reason, the warm blood, for all of the reasons, the warm blood is becoming more the horse of choice in eventing, more the horse of choice, not the horse of choice, but certainly we're seeing a lot more of them. So I have no source for this statistic because I remember it from a lecture that I attended, but in 2006, I was told that in Germany and the Netherlands, they were registering 55,000 warm blood foals a year. In the United States, the various German and Dutch warm blood registries, we were registering 5,500 foals a year. I have here a report from AmericanEquestrian.com, which is, I think, the American Horse Council, but I could be wrong. And it says that in 2005, because that was the last year of data that we have for this horse, for in this report, there were 165,000 quarter horses registered in the United States, 35,000 thoroughbreds, 8,000 Arabians. We're just talking about staggeringly more numbers of non-warm blood horses as opposed to warm blood horses. Now, these are just horses that are registered. There are lots of people breeding non-German and Dutch horses, but also, draft thoroughbred crosses, Irish sport horses, which, like, Lord only knows what's in those. Heinz 57 horses that have been picked up from auctions, horses that have mystery backgrounds, and, like, God love them, but they're not going to the CDI level of dressage because, again, you have to be this big, moving, elastic warm blood horse, and it's supply and demand. There just aren't that many warm bloods out there. And no, for nothing, but as you mentioned, the prices of dressage horses are really wacko. We are nothing compared to the hunters. And so the warm bloods that exist, it is way more marketable. It is way better financially. In an industry, horse breeding is the dumbest way to make money ever. Like, I can't believe anyone does it. And, like, God bless you people for doing it. But if you want to have the greatest chance at making some money, you breed a hunter. You don't breed an event horse. You don't breed even an international dressage horse. You breed a hunter. So numbers. It's a numbers game. There just aren't that many out there, period. And then what they're being bred to isn't as lucrative to be bred for your sport or my sport as it is for the hunters.
Right. Yeah. Kinsey and I spent some time in Wellington this winter. We were watching a hunter show, and one of the women next to me was, like, super ingrained in the hunter world. And a horse came in the arena and she said, "This horse is on lease for $1 million." And I was like, wait, what? On lease? I mean, first of all, $1 million and on lease, like, what does that mean? And she's like, per year. And I just, all of it is just so makes my brain completely explode. Like when you think something's crazy, there's crazier, or not crazy, but like just wild.
Crazier. Yeah.
I'm trying to be nice too. It is mind blowing. I'll say that. Yeah, that the numbers. Thank you for doing that research. That was very kind of you to come prepared for that one, and makes a lot of sense. There was a question from Ashley about warm-up strategies when the warm-up is chaos. Do you have any suggestions about that?
Certainly you try and find, like, you carve out your little space, and you try. If you can find a quieter warm-up, which, at an international event, like, they want to keep their eyes on you, so there aren't that many options. Looking up and calling inside, outside, heads up will solve so many problems, guys. And it's amazing how rarely it happens. So, like, hey, look up. And it's too late by the time you're in the warm-up arena where it's already gotten crazy. But practicing being in a busy warm-up arena cannot be understated, like how important that is. I think I wrote on this on social media last week.
Yeah.
Like, I have this beautiful, quiet barn where very rarely is there more than 3 horses in the arena. And God love my students, my lovely, sweet amateur lady students will sometimes go to horse shows and just get the, like, look in their eyes. And I know that if it's happening to my students, it's happening to other people's students too. And then we've got 10 people in the arena who all look like this. So practice at home. Set up times to let a little mayhem happen around you.
I like it. I know we're coming to the end here, but something that I'm curious about is how you approach reviewing your scores and adjusting accordingly, because I think that that's another thing that is probably very different between event riders, potentially very different between event riders and dressage riders. I think, a lot of event riders pick up the dressage test at the end of the weekend and shove it in the center console and just whatever. What's your approach?
Me too. Actually, that's not true. I pick them up because I'm looking to see if a judge has written down something funny, because I love a good funny comment. I keep a running list of, like, the best funny comments I've ever gotten. So it's pretty hard to make it into the top 3, but I check, particularly if something has gone really badly, because that's always good for a laugh. But I don't really ride for them. The judge is a mirror that talks to you, and a mirror can tell you what they see. They don't get to tell you how to fix it. They don't get to tell you whether you should fix it. For example, if I have a young horse that throughness is a little bit hard for, and so I make them a little bit round. And the judge says, wow, you need to work on, like, opening the bridle and improving the self-carriage. Like, yes, I do. I do need to work on that. But I went into the arena today knowing what I was going to do. So, like, I don't really care what this judge has to say about it, because, like, I had my plan. Yeah, and then every now and then they're really wacko, and you file your test in the cylindrical filing cabinet and light it on fire. But yeah, the one of the things that I love so much about dressage is that you get a score, you get a reason why the judge gave you what they gave you. So it's not just totally arbitrary, but ultimately, how you did. You watch the video, you say, ooh, like, yeah, that walk pirouette where the judge said it wasn't good, like, oh, it really wasn't good. Or, like, wow, that the judge gave me a 6 on that shoulder in, but, like, that is so much better than it's been. I know that I'm on a good trajectory. And I work with my coach, and my coach helps me, interpret what we do and do not care about
Right.
from my tests.
Yeah. And reviewing a video seems like a very worthwhile effort too, because sometimes things look so different than they feel.
For sure.
Are there any? So my dream would be that all of us, event rider, dressage rider, whoever we are, could have Lauren on our shoulder when we're competing the whole weekend, just, chiming in and helping us make smart decisions. If you were to give some advice to event riders who are going out to compete, what comes to mind? Sorry to put you on the spot with that, but
So when am I being asked for this advice? Am I being asked for this advice as they're on their way to the arena? Because then my answer is too late now. Training is done at home, and training, God love you guys, you have to memorize and practice your freaking tests. You have to practice them. You have to practice them in advance. You have to memorize them in advance, because you're given this test that you already have the answers to. Why not avail yourself of that time? Practice your tests at home. And yeah, Dobbin is anticipating if you practice a test too much, then Dobbin isn't on your aids enough. It's not that Dobbin has the test memorized. It's that you haven't sufficiently trained Dobbin to not anticipate the test. So training is done at home. Certainly, I understand even better now, having lived with it, how hard it is to be good at all of the phases. It's really easy for me to say, yeah, if your dressage isn't going well at home, why in the world would you show it? Back down a level. But I get it for you guys that there is a reason to advance, even if the dressage isn't perfect. I knew it, but getting to see it was really illuminating. I came home such a better coach from having gone to Tryon for 2 days, getting to really live with it. So yeah, practice in advance. You get to know what's going to happen to you in advance. And yeah, bad luck happens, but I really don't, as much as possible, I want to minimize relying on good luck to be successful. You can't do anything about bad luck, but I don't want to need good luck.
Right. Do what you can to make it predictable. Last question. And this is I know you're clinicking a lot. Do you have any time for additional virtual lessons? Do any of your students haul in, just stuff like that for people who would want more, Lauren?
Absolutely. I have my entire lesson schedule is online. You go to timecenter.com/Sprieser Sport Horse, and you can sign up in person, virtually, both myself and my assistant trainer, who's like me, but cuter and cheaper, which is also nice. But yes, you can, and I'm very good at my job, but also there's lots of us that are out there, and virtual lesson technology is really helpful if you are in a part of the country that doesn't have access to good capital D dressage people. If you have an internet connection, yes, you are in a part of the world where you can get access to good coaching.
There you go. Well, I hope you get more Ride IQ riders doing that. And we're so grateful for you. I can't believe you keep saying yes to us, really, just because you have so much to do. But I'm so lucky every time I get to chat with you, because I learn a lot, but it also just makes me happy. Maybe I'll book one of those virtual lessons and just use it to chat.
We do that. I do that.
Yeah.
I would like to end this, if I may, on my last what Lauren learned at the event was something that I wasn't surprised by at all. And that was just how freaking nice everybody was. Everyone was so nice, and everybody cared about each other, and everybody cared about each other coming home safe, and everybody cared about each other's horses coming home safe. I didn't get to stay for any of the cross country at all, but by the time I was leaving, almost everybody had at least walked their course once, and everyone was comparing notes. Everyone was helping out the, greener riders and saying, hey, did you see this? Did you think of that? Make sure that you pay attention to this. And this sport is so hard. Eventing is hard. Dressage is hard. Anything having to do with livestock that die if they get a bellyache is hard. And it was really comforting to know that even at the big international levels in an Olympic year, that everybody was nice. That's
very cool. I'm glad. That was a perfect note to end on. And you did mention that in the email you reached out to us with. Honestly, everything that you said was positive. And it's great to hear that. And everyone listening, we can help continue to make that the norm by being nice, whether we're in eventing or dressage.
Nice.
Well,
and memorize
yes, memorize your test, practice it.
Or I will be not.
Thank you so much.